everybody. OdatNurd here. Welcome back to the stream. I'm just going to go ahead and push a button that I forgot to press before we started. And welcome to tonight's live stream where we're going to continue work that we started on in the last live stream. Pardon me, where we're going to be working on a little package I'm working on called YouTube Editor for editing up your YouTube videos. Now, I have done a fair amount of work on this. And oh, hey, that's interesting. Uh, oh my goodness. Sorry, just having a little bit of pre-stream setup problems. But I think everything seems to be okay now. So, you know how we like to sort these things out. This is the second week that we're using the new control panel that I created in Node-RED. It seemed to work pretty well last week. I jiggered a couple of small little tweaks in there, so hopefully everything will be okay. Good evening, Ashwin. Pardon me. So I think we're probably ready to jump in now. I did a little bit of work on this between the last stream and this one, basically refactoring a whole bunch of stuff. Just sort of looking at it over there. In order to make it a little bit easier to work on this thing, there's still some stuff that we would like to do. Hopefully I'll be able to remember where all of the stuff is in here because the last time I worked on this was like Wednesday and then I had a bunch of other stuff to do. So let's go ahead and yeah, everything seems to be cool. Let's go ahead and dive on in, shall we? I'm going to push the new intro button. Let's see what happens. Can we go 2 weeks in a row where it actually works live? Hooray! 2 for 2, plus all the times I tested it and it seemed to work. But you know how various things in OBS sometimes tend to work right up until you're actually live and then they start doing weird things so that you look like a fool. Sort of an offshoot of how if you have a technical problem, hardware related or software related, depending on whether you're building a computer or programming it, you might run into an issue where no matter what you do, it's not working and you can't figure out why. And then you find someone and ask them to come over and give you help with that particular problem. And as soon as they look at it, they immediately say something like, power cord's not plugged in, or line 2 needs a semicolon. Or occasionally you'll say, okay, so my code's not working. And as we can see here online, never mind, I just saw the problem. Never fails. Having someone come to look at something is a definite way to get your problem solved, whether the other person helps you or you realize the thing that has been eluding you all this time. Same thing happens with OBS. You can test things as much as you like, but once you start going live, suddenly things start going on a little doolally. So here we are in YouTube Editor, and if you watched the last stream, then all of this stuff over here in the sidebar probably looks a little bit different than you remember before. I guess that's not the thing. This thing here, there used to be exactly 2 files in this bad boy, and one for the networking code and one for everything else. And I've split this up in another of what we like to refer to as the big scary refactor in order to make things a little bit nicer, which just follows on the same sort of action as the override audit package. I use the exact same mechanism here. So there is one file named editor. Let's go ahead and do this. This is the core of this thing, which, you know, if you've looked at the override audit source, you might notice this is exactly identical to that in every way, except line 9 says YouTube editor dot instead of override audit dot, because, you know, why why mess with things that seem to work? And then there are 2 things. There's the lib folder, which has various library code, which includes our logging code, which we can see right over here, as a matter of fact, for abstracting away logging things into the console, also being able to show you a message in the status bar or in a dialog. And it also has the ability to send its output to a panel as well, which is something I used while I was originally writing this thing way back in November. And then there's various other things in here. And probably just go over it just a little quickly how this whole thing operates, because in order to do anything with YouTube, you have to be able to send it requests to its data API and receive responses back. And in order to do that, you need to do either one of two things. You need to provide it an API key sort of thing that you include with your requests, or you need to provide it with an authorized token. The first one of those things you can use just from any old app, and that's basically getting public information. So you could find the information on channels that exist or videos that that channel has published, things of that nature. But for the purposes of this, we want much more information than that. We want to be able to see all of the videos on the channel, whether they've been published or not, and we want to get all the nitty-gritty details on actual videos as well, and hopefully, be able to send video information up in the other direction as well. For that, you need to have a token that you provide to the request when you ship it up, and Google has its own OAuth mechanism that allows you to do that. So the general flow of things is you have to authorize the application, in this case, the YouTube editor plugin, to be able to access your account. Then we specifically say what it is that we want to do. And you've probably seen this if you log in with Google or other things like I think Facebook does the same thing, GitHub does the same thing, says this particular application wants to have information about you and have access to things. Here's the list of things it wants to do. Are you okay with that? You say no. Well, this package kind of goes a little bit doolally because the thread that runs in the background kind of expects to get an answer back to that. And if you just close the browser, it doesn't. But we're going to ignore that for the time being because there's a lot more work that needs to be done there. However, if you say yes, then we get back a token that allows us to make requests. As a matter of fact, we get a couple of tokens. We get one that we can include in requests to be able to do stuff. And because those tokens expire after a certain period of time, we also have a refresh token that we can pass along to say, hey, remember me? This person said they could have access to my account. Give me a new token. The old one's expired. So in order to do all that stuff, you got to have a network thread. We don't have to have a network thread, but if you're in Sublime Text and you plan on doing anything of any sort of length whatsoever, you definitely want to have a thread there because otherwise the UI will hang while the code is running. So we have a network thread whose responsibility is to dispatch requests away and receive requests back and then trigger a callback so our code will know how it works. And there are three things that map that particular thing. The first of those is the request object, which is going to be over here. We'll just go ahead and zoop it over here for the time being. As we can see here, this is basically just a magic dictionary. Has a couple of key fields, and then everything else can be whatever you want. Name is the name of this particular request, which the thread uses to know what it is it's supposed to do. The second one is handler, which is, as we'll see in just a moment, an indication of what part of the command that made the request is supposed to be executed when the request actually comes back. So by default, the value is none, which means it's the same as underscore plus the name of the command. Otherwise, you can pass it whatever thing you want. So there's a little bit of a nice thing there. And everything else is a keyword arg. So any other things you pass to this constructor just get stuck into the dictionary. And then there are various things in here to get items, set items, and things of that nature. And it's also important to note that we have a hash method that hashes things out based on getting a key on this, which is creating a tuple based on the values. And that's important because we cache the result of a request to be able to respond easier and faster next time. We receive an answer to a thing, we store the request object that was used to get that data, and the next time someone asks with a request that appears to be the same, it just comes directly out of the cache. So in order to make a request, you make one of these things. What do you actually do with it? That is where the network manager comes in. And again, we'll plug that over here. I'm just going to close that file. A lot of these files are open because the last thing I did was the big scary refactor. We'll even close that up. Now the network manager's whole job is to be an interface layer between somebody that wants to make a request and that network thread that runs in the background. And to that, and it has a couple of things here, one that starts up the network thread and another one that stops the network thread if it's actually running. We saw these in the core code over here getting triggered. Sorry, the shutdown happens in the unloaded, which is plugin unloaded. The actual startup of this doesn't happen until the very first time a request is actually made. Now, there's a few different things that we have in here in the network manager. One is has credentials, and that is an indication of whether or not the user has at some point in the past gone through all that process of using the web page to be able to say, this plugin has authorization to access my YouTube account. Once you do that, we store that information in an encrypted file in the cache folder. As long as that is there, then we don't need to prompt the user to do anything else. We can use the cached information that we have to be able to request a new token. And that'll work as long as the person hasn't gone to the control panel and their YouTube account and disabled access. Is authorized indicates whether or not the plugin has actually authorized itself in this run, which means it has done a communication to make sure that it has a token that's actually valid, because that might not be valid if the last time I did this, for example, Monday, then the token it has expired by now, but it can always fetch another one. And the remainder of this is all about making a request where we just create take the request object and stick it into a queue that the network thread, can pull out and do something with. The whole mechanism of this operation, and we can see all of that code right here. We'll look down at the request first. When you make a request using the network manager, you give it the request object that you created that says what request you want to make, what parameters that thing needs to take, who's supposed to get a response back, including this callback, which is a method that will be called. And then it goes ahead and potentially makes a request or potentially not. So we can see here down on line 101, if this request is in the cache and we weren't told to definitely fetch it no matter what, you just immediately invoke the callback with whatever data was cached. So everything is just automatically cached without anything external having to do anything about that. If there's not otherwise it has to make a request. If the thread's not alive, start it up and then stick the request in the queue. Now, the important thing to note here is that this is all abstracted away. So when we put this request into the queue, the thing we need to put in for the thread to handle is the request that it's supposed to handle and the callback method that is supposed to be invoked when that request completes, whether it's succeeded or not. And here, this always invokes its own self.callback, which is the one up here. This is where the caching of this thing comes in. So if the response was a success, cache the result. Otherwise, delete the cached result. And then we call the user callback, which is what the command actually did. And there's also a little bit of extra handling in here. If the request was to authorize things, then we know that we're authorized. And if we're said we were deauthorized, then we throw away the cache and we're no longer authorized. And we'd have to do all of that stuff again. And am I using the requests dependency for this? That's a good question. I'm going to do this. I was having a little bit of a problem before the stream. Terminus did not want to do anything. If I did this, there's a lot of stuff that is required for this. The list of all of the dependencies are here in this gigantic Google API client super dependency. And yes, I am using the requests library, a specific version of the requests library, and a whole bunch of other stuff too. So basically, I went to the Google page for the data API. They have a Python example. It says, here's how you run the example. Then I set up a virtual environment, installed exactly only the modules that I needed in order for everything to work here. And then I pulled them out of the virtual environment and created this dependency so that everything is all in one place. The dependency and the package are both on GitHub, but currently private. However, that whole aspect of the requests dependency is sort of buried within the internals of what the libraries that Google created has done. Now, that's what the network manager does, and we could very quickly also look at let's close that one too, the networking code itself, which has got a lot more information in it. Now, there's some of this stuff that still needs to be tweaked. It's still a little bit hacky based on the fact that it's originally was meant to be a standalone Python program that you run that I converted into this as a proof of concept, and then I split it, out even further. So These values here are things that we need to provide in our request, that we are accessing the YouTube API version 3. That's the latest version of the API. Ashwin says, it's a wonder you got all that to work. Actually, it's a wonder I got it all to work twice, because I set it up initially back in November. This was one of the things I was working on. If you remember, we were following the devlog there, and everything seemed to work after a lot of banging my head on the wall with OAuth. And then I thought, I'm going to continue working on that. But when I originally set it up, I did all of that same stuff, installing the dependencies, but I threw them into the lib directory. But I wanted to be able to run this not only on this machine here, but also on my Windows laptops and my MacBook as well. So clearly that needed to be a dependency. So I went through all of the steps of doing that again, but it was way more fraught the second time, because back in November, or back in December, I guess, I needed to install this for Python version 3.3, and it was a lot smoother then than now. Now it has like a minimum version, so there was a bunch more crap that had to happen. One other thing that this does, I mentioned, is we save the information that comes back, the information on what a URL we hit to be able to refresh a token, what the refresh token is, and stuff like that. We store those in an encrypted file, which currently is encrypted using the static password. So all things being equal, how this should work is when you do something for the first time, it should pop up a panel and ask you for the password. Use that to decrypt the file and make the connection, and then everything is good from there. But these things being what they are, and notice also that I'm including the PyScript library here, even though Python 3.8 has such a library built in, but this is currently running in the legacy plugin host for Python 3.3 because we need a dependency, and package control doesn't support dependencies for the new plugin host yet. I'm imagining that once we start seeing pre-releases of that coming out, that's when Sublime 4 is probably going to release. My guess is that they're probably not gonna push things out before package control could theoretically work with dependencies, because anybody that's writing plugins is probably going to want to start using dependencies day zero. All the people that aren't already in the Discord, for example, that haven't already started doing work to set things like that up, and you're going to have that support. That's just a guess on my part, though. They might release it to the dev channel prior to that happening. There's a various amount of stuff in here, get the configuration to get the client ID, client secret, auth URI, and token URI, the stuff that uniquely identifies us for making requests, storing the values into the encrypted file, reading the encrypted data out, and returning it back, such as these. And here's where we start getting into the bit where the Google APIs for this are magic, if you will, in as much as you tell them, we can see it right here, we were accessing YouTube API version 3. Here's the credentials to be able to access this thing. This returns a magic object that has methods that map to the actual data API itself. I'm not sure if that's sort of rolled into the code, or if it's actually downloading some sort of XML file or something that tells it what's all in there. But basically, in our network thread, we have to have a list of the requests that can be made, what method in this class is actually responsible for them, and then it just goes ahead and does things. So we can see when you call authorize, it says get authenticated service. That gives it the magic class that it needs in order to make requests. Therefore, we are authenticated. If you say deauthenticate, it removes the credentials and throws that object away. Now we're deauthenticated. And here we get into the actual business of actual data. So for example, in order to gather the list of videos on a channel, you need to send it a request for YouTube channels. And we say we want to get a list. And pardon me. Because of the way this is authorized, this actually is pulling information for all of the channels that are associated with the account that is authorized, which in most of the time is just one. Um, and we get a list of items. That's going to give us a list of what YouTube refers to as the uploads playlist. So all the videos that have been uploaded to the channel, regardless of their state, is just a standard playlist, just like anything else. So you need to make a request of playlist contents to get the contents of the thing, which gives us various things like the video ID, the title, description. We're generating a link to the actual video, and then we return the results back. And similarly for details, the magic of handling a request is given a request object, get the request and the callback that the manager put into the object when it added it to the queue. Get the YouTube, ask the request map to know what is the member of this class that executes this. Call it, and then if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. You set timeout so that the callback is invoked, but in the main thread of Sublime, this jumps our thread controlled, if you will, from the network thread into the main thread without having to use another queue. I guess because there's one built into Sublime that does that. Queue's done, and then all this thread does is just keep looping, waiting for that sort of thing. So that is the basis for how all of this stuff works. And if we actually were to look at a particular command, we could see that. Now that's all of that particular code there. If we look in the core, which I think that's where this is, everything for this thing for being able to execute commands is abstracted away into this helper YouTube request class. As we can see, it's not a subclass of anything, sort of a mix-in for any command that wants to do something that gives it some internal state. My dog is being a bit of a butt out there. He sort of spent most of the day feeling sickly because he had a sore shoulder, but I think he's feeling better now, and as a result, he's really feeling his oats after napping all day. So we have basically a stub run method that basically invokes a stock authorized request if we're not already authorized, and invokes this underscore authorized method if we are. And as we can see here, we're creating the authorized request and telling it underscore internal auth is the method in this class that should be invoked when this result is retrieved, whether it's success or a failure. And our version of that is store the values and then invoke underscore authorized, which is something that the subclass needs to actually implement. And we also use this whenever we're making a request. We create the request, the handler, and the arguments. It makes a request object for us and gives it off to the static network manager. There's only ever one instance of that thing, which does all that stuff we just saw. Spin up the thread if it's not already running, give it the thing, or get a result back. And we also have something to handle errors for us directly, and a default is enabled method, for example, that makes sure that commands are only enabled when we actually have credentials. Now, the thing that we could look at here, pardon me, is view details. We can see here, this is an application command. There only needs to be one of these, but it also mix in the YouTube request. So we don't have any run in here because it's coming from the YouTube request class. So for the purposes of anything that uses YouTube request as one of the subclasses, underscore authorized is the place where this command is going to be executed. And what it's going to do is make a request for uploads playlist, and that's going to invoke this when it gets the response for actually knowing what the magic ID for the playlist for uploads is, which causes it to make a request for playlist contents for the playlist ID that is the results that came back. And when those results come back, that gives us this, which gives us the list of items and a quick panel. And when the person selects a video, that comes down here. It asks for the video details for the video that was selected, which invokes this, which creates this particular command. So in the world of the purely theoretical, because I was doing a bunch of stuff, if I said get video details, for example, it's running in the background, fetching all of the stuff. There's not any spinner currently. Here's a list of all the videos on the channel. We could pick, for example, Introduction to Override Audit, and boom, here's a window with the information. There's the title of the video. This is the body of the description of the thing, and there are some tags in there as well. And because of that internal caching mechanism, although we can see here in this code, ain't no caching going on. If I did the exact same thing again, the list of videos is just instantaneously returned because it was cached from last time. Although we do have the ability by passing a false value as the last thing in the make request in order to get it to always ask, even if it's already cached. And I could pick the same thing again, and it's also instantaneous in that regard as well. So that's sort of the stuff that has been previously done. Now, since the last stream, as I said, way back then, there was exactly 2 files in this thing, and I've split it all out to make things a little bit nicer to look at. And if we were to jump over to the core of this bad boy, this is the list of things that we like this to be able to do. Now, this is one of those packages that I'm, making for my own particular purposes. Pardon me. And as a result, there's a couple of things that I'd like to do whenever I'm creating a new video. I generally look at one of the other videos that I've done in the same series in order to set myself up with the boilerplate I need for the description body and such, right? So that everything has a consistency to it. So this would allow me to easily pull one of those down if I wanted to. Also, there's various things that you should be doing with your videos on YouTube to get more exposure, like tags that don't suck and using better titles than some of my earlier videos have, things of that nature. So I'd like to be able to also edit existing videos in a nicer way as well here in Sublime and not in the YouTube studio, which is really quite slow. So plus, we're as Sublime people, we really want to be using Sublime. So there's a few things that I'd like to do in here. This isn't even really all of them. But for example, maximum title length is supposed to be 100 characters. So what if that window started throwing up a region for any parts of the text that were over 100 characters, which is technically something that we could do in the syntax definition that's used for that. But, same thing for the description. Those ones are just in there because they were tips that were in the list of, I was trying to find the information on what's the maximum title, what's the maximum description, and good luck finding a page anywhere on Google that provides you that information without telling you all the things you're doing wrong. So I thought I'd just throw a couple of those in there. They're probably not as correct as they could be at this point because the magic algorithm on YouTube changes on a pretty regular basis. But there's a lot of important information in here. For example, the tags are 500 characters long, and each tag can only be 30 characters, no more. Also, if you use spaces in a tag, as far as anybody has been able to tell, the actual length of the tag counts as extra 2 because it stores them with double quotes internally, and those count against your limit. So actually, 28 characters is probably where you're at for tags because no one's ever really going to use a single word for a tag most of the time. So unless you were making only single word tags, you're not really gaining anything by not just assuming it's a little bit bigger. And that's an indication of that. And that as well. So those are a couple of things I'd like to do in here, be able to actually push those things up. And then I also want a little bit of auto completion and templating as well. Let's go ahead and do that again. Actually, let's do plugin 101. Let's see. That is the most recent one of those, is it? I guess it must be. These are actually sorted, but they don't come out in a sorted order if you filter the list. So if we were to look at this, we can see all of the tags that are used for that. This part here is stuff that's always in one of these. So rather than having to do this to be able to copy one of these and paste it out, would be kind of nice if you just, did that and there were a list of the different things. Even better yet, whoops, you probably have noticed that all of the titles of my videos have this little tag on the front of them that shows what series they're in and such. So I like to, if there was an autocomplete in here, setting that could set a setting in the window so that everything else knows that this is the plugin 101 video. It could auto populate something in there, things of that nature. It's kind of where I'm going with this whole operation. Um, and I also have some rudimentary syntaxes in here, like for example, the very first sentence, the very first line, if you will, is because if you look at the way I have the thing set up, this is all one line with soft word wrapping at that column is green because that's the part that appears above the fold. When you save any view, it makes an additional request to update the metadata. That's the plan. It doesn't do it yet, but that is what I'd like it to do. I also have an idea that this middle pane, whoops, don't do that, pal. This middle pane could, well, whoops, I used the wrong key, could have a view on the side that was the thumbnail of the video as well, because there doesn't need to be this much space over here. That would definitely require, I would imagine, pulling down the image and converting it into a data URI or something along those lines. Could use a HTML tab, and well, we can use HTML sheets because we're assuming Sublime 4. We're just assuming plugin host 3.3 to make everything else work. So that's something else I've kind of been toying with. I'm not entirely sure about that one. The other thing that I have set up in this is that the tab key just automatically jumps currently between the three panes, and shift tab goes the other way without having to use control to do that. Well, control tab wouldn't really do that, would it? Because it's easier. You know, I'm never going to use an actual tab in the title here, for example, other than actually expanding an auto completion out or something along those lines. As we can see here, the syntax leaves a lot to be desired in how it's actually matching things too. Because I originally was working on this with the video's common questions, which all start with CQ and then a number. So I had rules set up for that. And then as soon as I loaded one of these, that did not work out quite right. And I just hacked it up a little bit, but more work needs to be done on that one. So what we're going to need to have here is some event listeners for events happening. And if we were to look at new window, this is the command that's responsible for creating one of those YouTube windows. You can pass it optionally video ID and a title and a description and a list of tags. It will create the window, make sure that tabs are not visible, use the saved layout that gives us what we want. It sets a setting into the video that tells it that it's a YouTube window, so that commands that want to only enable themselves in one of those windows can do so. And additionally, if you gave it a video ID, that's stored in a window setting as well, so that any command inside one of those panes that wants to know what the video ID is can get it, which is key for that thing you just mentioned about being able to update the metadata back in the other direction. It's probably going to need to know what the YouTube ID is. The video ID is. So instead of having that on a per view setting, it's a window setting instead. And then this is the information for all of the groups, what syntax should be used for it, what settings should be set for it, so that as we can see, it always has a setting of YouTube view, but we also have a distinct setting in here as well. That allows us to have a key binding, for example, of tab and shift tab that work across all of the views. And then we can also have additional commands that only enable themselves in the tags view or in the video body and such, which is going to be key for the event listeners we're about to create. The tab is actually mapped to, that's a good question. It's not next view and stack because each one of those, I believe that only navigates through tabs in the current group, and each one of those things is its own group. But if we were to look at this, I have my own command for that. That's right. So we would have to go for next view, which is figuring out based on whatever the currently active group is, which is something that would be broken if we included an extra pane for the thumbnail. It constrains the it grabs the currently active group and constrains it to a value of 1, 2, or 3, but well, 0, 1, and 2, I guess, after adding 1 with wraparound, and then sets that as the active group. But it only does it in windows where it's a YouTube window. The command disables itself, but the key binding also disables itself so that it's not considered, which is an important thing. The command does it to make sure that no matter how you bind it, it will only do something in a window where it makes sense. And the key binding has to have a context that disables it. Otherwise, it'll steal the tab key in other situations. And then, for each one of those views, which is backwards here, it reverses through that list. So it does 2, 1, 0 instead of 0, 1, 2. That's just sort of a one line or two leave the cursor up in the title field. Otherwise, the cursor is left in the third view at the bottom where the tags are, and then you have to manually either switch up or add another command for focus view or focus group. But since we're already calling focus group, if we reverse the list, it goes back in the other direction. And for each one of those things, they need to be scratched. They need to have those settings. Cram the body in, and we're good to go on that sort of thing. Now, what I'm going to do here quickly, just to verify how I did this, because I think, did I not have no, just in the source, I had events because there weren't that many of them. Okay. I'm not entirely sure how I might want to work this because there's going to be multiple event listeners, if you will. There's one for that and one for that. Because there's only 2 of them here, I put them both in one file. I guess we could do that for the purposes of, whoops, move that out of the way. We could do that for the purposes of this too, and then only make things split apart if it seems like it's getting a little unwieldy. Might be a way to go. I would imagine if that was the case, then yeah, I would do that here. So I might say core and events like this, and we might also say from dot events import star as well. And then we would need to include the events in here, which we haven't actually created yet. So we could say, do I have a standard thing for that? No, I guess I probably don't, do I? All right. So do a file relative to the current view, and we would call it events.py and import cripes. Import Sublime and plug in like so. Oh, I guess we need one of these too. I'll just steal it from over here. And let's go ahead and jump into from the core. Let's copy that. We really only want the log here. Assuming we actually want to do something like that. We don't know if we do or not. And then let's see. YouTube title event listener, which would be a view event listener, let's say. Whoops. And then we need a class method for is applicable, which is going to have a class and settings and return settings. Whoops. Dot get. Already forgot the magic of the setting for this. Bam. And then we would take this and put it into here. Whoops. As the event that is happening with. And we also need, I believe, to do the same in the core. Nope, sorry. In this one. I think we need to say, no, we don't need to do that there, do we? Because that's in the core. Is the convention to put listener or event listener after the class name? I I for me it is. It's not one of those things like having command on the end of a command name or input handler for input handlers, because apart from the class having a name, it's not really exposed to any API. But I find it easier when doing something like this, that I can type this and be able to hit all my listeners in a way that I might not be able to if I didn't have that. That's also why I do that for commands as well, except for some of those plugins in the scraps repository where I forgot about it, and both me and Keith managed to look at them and decide that they were good and merge them in without noticing that we didn't actually do that. Um, Let us say, just for our testing purposes here, def is modified. So that's not going to have a view. I think that's just going to be it right there, right? I don't think there's any, or sorry, unmodified, pardon me. Yeah, it's just the view there, which means there isn't one at all for this. So that's just self, but we should probably say on modified, and then we could say log the title was modified, just so that we know things are working. And if we reload this, everything seems to be okay. We can also see there that the YouTube thread is whacked and terminated whenever the plugin reloads, which means that the cache information is lost as well, because it's not persisted anywhere. It's only persisted in memory. It could be persisted to disk. That's one of the things on the far future to-do list. But generally speaking, if I'm doing this. And again, the reason for creating this initially was to be able to, if I'm answering a question for somebody, I can say list videos, go like, yo, it's actually doing something in the background here. Someone say asking about the life cycle, so I can do this. And when I hit this, it has copied the YouTube link to that video to make it easier to paste places. That's why I originally came up with that, because otherwise you got to go to the YouTube studio and it's remarkably slow. So probably only doing that, once I start Sublime, it's probably running for forever. So there's really no need to cache it more than just in memory. Um, so, but it could be on disk. The other problem is if things change, then your cache is out of date. So it seemed like a better idea to do it in memory for that part at least. Anyway. Otherwise, we could do something similar to not cache the list of videos, but cache the details of the videos, update that when we push results up, and have an F5 key that refreshes if you think it's out of date. But I probably forget to do something like that. So if I said now details, and we'll pick the end card template. Uh-oh. That's interesting. Let's try that again. We'll pick one that we know worked previously. Interesting. Oh, I bet you there's not any tags in that one because it's. Oh, all right. That's a bug we should probably fix, but that's working, and that's working as well. So it only works in there. So the way we set that up absolutely works. That's great. So let's go ahead and close that, and we'll just throw a pass in here like this. That's 2, right? We're going to want a couple of these. So let's go ahead and copy that. Oops. Probably should have did that in the right order, huh? There we go. I got a little confused about how I was pulling that off. There we go. So that's the title event listener. This should be the, oh, I was calling that the wrong thing too, wasn't I? We'll call this one tags. Actually, we can just go ahead and, well, we'll leave that there for the time being. Yeah, I called it body and all of this stuff, but it's not really body. It's actually description. I'm really sad about that. I'm also sad that I seem to be flip-flopping between whether I use single quotes or double quotes for strings. You can see what parts of this were done based on, in relation to how long I spent working on TypeScript that day. So a body and tags, let's say. So this is the body event listener. And this is the tags event listener. And I think I forgot to copy that. We'll go ahead and do that just in case. So we'll go ahead and go there and there. Boom. And then we need that and that. Whoop. And, whoops. I meant to do that. Pardon me. That sort of action is why I find it hard to edit text in things that aren't Sublime. Okay, so that should solve all of those problems. So now our event listeners are actually hooked up. Now the error was video details result tags. Unfortunately, I don't have anything that logs any sort of usable error in here. Maybe that's something that we should actually do. Let's go ahead and close that. That would be down near the bottom here. Really, that's the entirety of the result that comes back is the thing that is used as the error message. And it is just that. Tags. That doesn't help. That doesn't help anybody. Son of a bitch. I'm not entirely sure how to resolve that. Hang on a second. Which video was it that did that? When we said, I guess we were probably doing details. The end card template generated an error. Okay. So just to test that, I'm going to go over here and click this studio button. We're going to wait forever. And then we click this. I'll bring this over in just a second here. Yeah, title contains that, and we hit this thing. Let's pull this out. And yeah, there's no tags in there, so that is an issue. So I imagine if I said this and save those results, move that out of the way. If I did it again, that works. We'd never have problems debugging if we had meaningful error messages. Yeah, I know, right? So I guess the real question there is, well, one is, that's irritating, isn't it? I hate it when things try to be smart about whether or not they need a scroll bar when things are just the right size. So it doesn't need a scroll bar. Oh, but now that it has a scroll bar, it does. Oh, but now it doesn't. Let's go ahead and delete that. I can't believe that that's such a useful tag. I guess the problem such as it is, in that case, I'll dock this back up because we might need it again later. Now, if I do it, it's gonna fetch that cached information, which is sort of unfortunate. We might need some sort of flush cache message that throws away all of the cache data except for whether or not it's authorized. Then the issue is the not list. So what's actually being invoked here? Such a lovely blinking scroll bar. Yeah, I hate when that happens on a page where you're actually trying to type something into a text field and it's doing that same sort of I need it, I don't need it, I need it, I don't need it. And like, come on, let me make this field 1 pixel wider so that it stops having that rounding error that's making it decide. Details is a call to videos list, which is this. Now I must admit, Common use cases indeed. List by video ID is the thing that we're actually invoking here. Snippet, content details, statistics. Maybe the problem, well, maybe it is actually us that's doing something dumb here. Maybe this is causing the problem. So let's go ahead and say got and item, let's say. Reload this bad boy. That'll clear our cache for us. And actually we need get video details and gotta add a spinner to this thing. That one. So it ended up with nothing? Really? That doesn't seem right somehow. Oh, this doesn't work the way I thought. I think it does. I think we need something like that. As a matter of fact. I forgot how my own thing works. Okay, let's try that one more time. It's not like print. Nope. Okay. Well, maybe we need to look up how the logging works. Maybe we could just log the thing. Maybe we could just use print on the dang thing. I gotta know. Primarily, this is because I have several versions of this logging code spinning around. It has dialogue. Yeah, see, this one doesn't send things to the status bar. And it only grabs args and keyword args. Oh, maybe it doesn't use. Yeah, okay. It's probably that. It might be time for me to actually work out the full the full merge of all the different versions I have of this. There we go. So result is tags. Which does not seem correct. I mean, the issue there, of course, is probably that if we were to look at this, it has a description and a title, but it doesn't have any tags. So probably the issue is in assuming that this is going to do what we want, which could probably be said about all of them realistically. Oh, son of a bitch. All right, well, we'll just quit that and restart it, shall we? Since auto package reloader will never load it again. Let's details for you. There we go. That works better. Okay. So lesson learned on that, I guess. All of these should have the same sort of sensible default. I'm going to... Every video, I'm going to say every video has to have an ID, because if it doesn't have an ID, it can't be viewed on YouTube. And you can't create a new page on YouTube without uploading a file of some sort to it, or doing a live stream where one is automatically created for you. So that part should be fine. So let's say that these should both be .get, and then we pull that and do a little bit of that just to make sure those are probably cool. And I probably got a couple other places where something like this is happening. This can conceivably return none, so we don't need to worry about that. There's either an uploads playlist or there's not, which works out well for a particular channel. That I actually have tested because I have a Google account that doesn't have a YouTube channel associated with it. And playlist contents, that's the actual request. This one doesn't grab that, so well, we'll leave that for the time being and reload that. So there's one potential issue done. Let's say we'll go up here and say throw a to do in here. Requests that come back may not. Fields in request results, for example, tags, don't seem to be mandatory, so we should probably be smarter about that. Just so we have a record that we noted that that is in fact the case for later. With that out of the way, we could jump back to this. Now, actually, we want the core. We said the maximum title length is 100 characters, right? Oh, and for the body, it is 5,000. That one's going to be trickier to pull off for a test type operation. But I imagine def, let's see, check length. We're going to give it a view and a max length, and let's say a scope. And we can say if len view is greater than max length, then view dot add regions, and oh shoot, I'm going to say there's only ever going to be one. We'll say key and scope. So we can say, whoa, son of a bitch. Is that the size we had before? I don't know. Well, looks like it probably was. Okay. And that would be the key. And, let's just double check that we know what we're talking about here. Key, the regions, then, okay, so there's going to be a list of regions, which is going to be 1. We'll do that just for the time being, and a scope, which is going to be the scope that we provide. We don't need any annotation or any of that other stuff. Else, view dot, is it erase regions? Yes. Erase regions key, and we need something here. So let's see, the region should start at, say, the length of the view minus max length. Let's do this. And then we don't have to do this every time. Whoops. Starting at that and going to length, for example. And here in the title event listener, we can just call check length for self.view, and let's say 5 just as a test, and that's the key. And then the scope would be something like, I guess we can do this. Don't need that. Reload. And actually, we can just say new window. Make that a little bit easier. All right, well, clearly I did the math wrong on that, but it otherwise triggers correctly. Start at max length minus length. So I probably did it backwards, huh? Let's reload that. And with that being the case, crap, that made it worse. be very careful about just randomly choosing things. So if this was the case, then the value should be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It should be 5 when the length is 5. And there. So it should be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It should be 5 and 6 when the actual value is 7. So if the length is 7, the maximum length is 7 minus how much it's actually over the thing, which is length minus max length minus length. 7 minus 5 is 2. 7 minus 5 is, oh, but I'm anchoring it the wrong way. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Let's think about that. Let's ponder the mathematics of, if the length is 5, we want to know how much this is longer than what it needs to be, which is the maximum length. Actually, it's length minus maximum length. That's probably why that might have gone a little doolally. The length of this thing minus the maximum length is going to be how much longer it is than it should be. So, for example, if the length is 7, does it though? Yeah. I think I need to, length is the length of the thing minus how much it is. So I think I kind of want something like that. So if the length is 7 minus 5 gives us 2. 7 minus 5 gives us 2. That gives us the 5. Is it going to be off by 1? We do something like that. Refresh that. 5. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If we said the maximum length is 5, then that's as long as it can be. Every character after that is going to give us an error. That, hey, bro, that is a little bit too long. Perfect. Now that that's so long, I think we want to do that and that and that and that and that and call it this. Oh, shoot, that's actually a thing. L. Look at that. It's exactly 79. And it fits PEP 8, so there we go. Boom. It needs to have a start and an end, right? Is it? Yeah, I guess it is, isn't it? Yeah. Overcomplicate things. If that's the case, then it can totally have the max thing here, right? Good call. Zoop. Alrighty. Cool. I can, oh, I'm going to put that back the other way. The longer way. There, that looks nice. How about that? We need one of those down here too. But this one's 5,000. Whoops, that's not the one I meant to grab. I meant to grab this one. You know, that should have been more obvious. If max length is the place where it's supposed to end. Yeah. That should be 5,000, and this one should be 100. That takes care of those. Oh, shoot. That's irritating. That is source init. There should not be an E in there. Let's quit and restart because we're going to need to reset that bad boy. And groovy cool. And oh yeah, right. The length is a lot longer than that now. Should those regions persist? No, I don't think they should. What are the odds that one of these things is going to pop back up like that anyway? So that's maximum title length, and description is that. Something funky. I think it just, I don't know if it stops you from typing anything that long or it cuts it off. To be perfectly honest, I never really played too much with it. It's just conventional wisdom that there is a length, though it ain't documented anywhere. I imagine somebody has. Theoretically, the length is the description is definitely documented. I'm pretty sure I've seen that. But for the title, the 100 characters could potentially be less physical length that it will let you do, and more the longest practical length that you can actually use. Because when you have thumbnails that are, inside of the up next bar and stuff, it wants to, or when you finish a video and it shows the end card or just the grid of videos, when it's done, it wants to overlay the title of the video on top of that little area. There's a maximum amount of space that it could be. I'd kind of love to be able to hide the title of the video in a case like that, so that just the one from the thumbnail would be the thing that's there. But apparently that is not kosher. Oh, did I do that right? 105,000. That's what I said there, right? That one's 100. That one's 5,000. Tags potentially trickier. Depending on how we want to do it, because it can only be 5,000 characters long, but there can be no more than 30 characters per tag, or realistically 28 characters per tag if there's spaces in it. And one thing I also wasn't sure of is that the thing said that the tags field can be at most 500 characters, which I think, actually, now that I'm actually saying that, that is, oops, shoot, don't do that. If I bring this misclick, the actual tag length we can see is definitely 500 characters. Description is 5,000 and title is 100. So there you go. It actually is documented in a place now. That wasn't the case back in December, though, mind you. But there's been a lot of work done on YouTube Studio recently. No go? All right. Go ahead and put that back. So yeah, there you go. The length of the tags field can be 500 characters, but no tag can be longer than 30 characters, which technically means, as we say, 28 characters because it needs to have a quote on either side of it if it has a space to make it 30. Plus, there has to be a space for the comma that separates them in the string for 31, I guess. But it has to be 5,000. So the magic, they're 500. So the magic here becomes: do we just do something like this? Set this to 500 and set this to tags len. Oh, this one should actually be body len. No, I got to go through that and fix that. I'll tell you what. This should be tags. Simplistically, this would let you know if you typed too much stuff, but maybe we actually want to know if we type a tag that's too long, in which case this becomes more problematic. And more like every time this is modified, we have to grab the whole contents of the thing, separate it on commas. And as far as I know, there's no way to have a comma in a tag. Well, I guess we could see what the YouTube editor makes of something like that, right? What better place to determine how this might work than actually inside of here? Whoops. So if I did that and saved it, it has double quotes around. Oh, actually, that's not what I wanted to do. Stoop. Whoops. This. Oh, oh, it's space that separates it, huh? As soon as you type the comma. So if that was the case, it is not possible to have a comma inside of a tag because their editor does something to it. Now I'm going to assume we could try to cram one in if we were using our own thing to upload it, but I don't know that that's necessarily a good idea. So if the people that made it don't want you to do a thing, then I'm not willing to go around that particular thing. So what we could do is this, just track the length, or every time it's modified, grab the whole thing, split it by commas, and then for each one, see if they are too long. Actually, we don't even need to do that because those things all have distinct scopes. Whoops. In order to do this, we're going to, come on, man. We're going to need something that actually has tags in it to be able to check. Which probably be well, these ones definitely have tags. Some of the earlier ones are a lot more crunky in that regard. All of this stuff should be one variable function tag, even for uh-oh. Might need to fix my syntax. Commas are that, and everything else is this. Maybe we should fix that because then we could actually just grab the list of regions every time we did this, and if any of those regions ends up being too long, we could flag it as having an issue. Problem with that being I don't know, the last one would still work. Yeah, let's go ahead and give that a jingle. Syntax tags. Yeah. Maybe we just need to do this. I wasn't conceiving of the notion that, let's get rid of that before we blow something up. I wasn't conceiving of the idea that I'd want to actually extract something like this. So if we did that, now that's variable function tag, and that's keyword other. Yeah. It's probably not correct, but you know, when you're doing something that's not technically programming language related, why do I have the size of that set so wide? Historically, this is always how I've done this. It might even be nicer to have it just be a taller view than that and just put one tag per line or something. But this seems like an easier way to pull that sort of thing off. So let's say not that. Let's say we want that anyway. If the overall field is too long, we definitely want to know. But let's say for R in view dot find by selector, and we want that. If len R is greater than, oh shoot. We could make this actually clever. If the tag doesn't have spaces in it, it can be 30. Otherwise, it has to be 28. The information that Sublime or that YouTube wraps it in double quotes and counts those as something that I haven't seen officially documented on the YouTube site because there's really not a lot of information about that. But I found that information in several places, um, and I assume people that make it their whole business to try to take money out of your pocket to monetize your video or promote your channels know what they're talking about in this sort of regard. So let's say, well, just for our own purposes here, let's say 30. Um, I guess we want to say this. Append R. Then if ers, then we want this. We would use region dot orangish. Is that one of the ish colors? And this would be ers, and the key for both of these would be YT tag body. We also check the length. Yeah, that should work. Regions can overlap. There can be multiple regions on one line. There just can't be multiple icons on one line. So that seems to work. So what the? There we go. Crap. Let's go ahead and fix that, shall we? Copy paste being what it is. Let's move this one to the top, just because. Reload that and jump back to here. Ooh, is this too long? Boy, they're also spelled horribly too. But that's neither here nor there. Interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, I mean, technically YouTube's not complaining about it, but I don't know that it would, per se, other than not actually using that tag to let anybody discover the actual video. But man, well, at least we know it works. That should also trip the length of the whole field should we happen to type enough stuff. And then, oh, that's not going to work, is it? Whoops. Oh, yeah. We can't actually autocomplete stuff in there. Cool. Does the order of these actually matter for which one goes where? Let's try moving this down and see, because that's not something that I have ever played with before. Whoops. Come on, you. Nope. Okay. Cool. Let's put that back the other way because I like it better that way. Greater than 30. Actually, it should be 28, shouldn't it? How much worse does that make this? Why is the arrow key not doing what I expect? There we go. All of these should go away. So yeah, cool. The other thing we want in this, because that is good, is we jump back to the new window. We want spell checking to be enabled for these things. That's what I'm going for, yeah. I'd rather have red for both of them, but then it might be a little unclear about what's happening there. Yellow perhaps might have been a better choice for that. What's yellow look like in this color scheme? Now that you say that. Assuming that actually is a thing, and I believe it is. Well, maybe it's not. Did that not load? So, something else that comes to mind, should they be backfilled or underlined with a squiggle instead? When it comes to the title, I definitely wanted it to be boxed around like that. I like the idea of the background on that because 0 misspelled words in here. Are you sure that text is a word? Because I don't think it is. It totally, once upon a time, someone told us, I can't remember if it was in the forum or the Discord, the magic of this, which is that this has gathered the syntax from the place where the text was copied, how that actually works. And I think there was a way to stop it, but I can't remember what it is. But the spelling selector, right? Cool. Okay. Cancel that without saving, and that one. I get you. I see what I did there. And yeah, close that without saving. None of those are scratch. Close that without saving. So there's a couple of things we want here. So let's close that. Whoops. We want spell check to be turned on. And, whoops. Come on, man. Cut a guy some slack. Spelling selector needs to be tweaked too. So that's here. We want that one, and we want that one. Now, actually, I would imagine these probably should just be syntax-specific settings and not set here. So, if that was the case, let's go ahead and say, yeah, whoop, shit, that's not what I meant to do. For 10106, like so. Okay, so that's the doing this thing. I wish ignored words was a project-specific setting. I have certain words to be ignored only in a project, but not globally. That used to be a problem for me after a fashion in IntelliJ. Not quite in this fashion, but since I've started using Sublime, that actually hasn't come up. The thing that I found annoying in IntelliJ products, well, I guess all JetBrains projects, but I noticed it most in IntelliJ. It's one of those editors that inside of a project creates a .idea folder, like .vs for VS Code or whatever that stores editor specific settings. One of the settings it puts in there is project specific spelling information. However, which is technically nice because there were some things I was doing that were work related, where there are various words that aren't in the dictionary, but they're domain specific, so they're definitely not spelled incorrectly. And then if I'm working on a project that's not a work project, I want those words maybe to be spelled incorrectly or whatever, right? Basically, because we have some nomenclature that's incorrectly spelled all the time. The problem with that, the way they did it, is not only was it project specific, but it was user specific as well. And the way that it got the username was different across Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. So you should put the idea folder into source control so that your editor settings follow you around when you're working on a thing. But every time I transitioned from Windows to Linux, all sorts of things would end up being misspelled, and then I'd have to manually open that XML file and copy the list and resync it and change it to what I thought my username was. It was exceptionally irritating. Um, so with this one, we're going to say, whoop, my goodness. I guess we're going to need to make that a little taller. Actually, let's just go ahead and do it from here because it'll be easier. We're going to need a little bit of that information. And we can do the same thing for all of these things. So we could say spell check is going to be set to true, and spelling selector. I guess that's going to be slightly different. We could just say text.youtube. That seems like it would probably work. Now I'm going to have to change the location of that thing. That's YouTube title. This one. Whoops. I can't remember. I mean, I could look, but a little bit of that. And the last one is this one, where we start seeing something happen here. Did that do anything? I may need to quit and restart. Move here. And this one too. And one more. Things I will do to not open a thing. I have no experience with XML, but it seems to be very bulky in the sense too much characters. The YAML format of syntax files is actually nice to work with. I agree with that 100%. And anytime someone asks me a question about syntax stuff and they want to use TM language, I say, you could convert that or you could find someone else to help you, because it's just specifically for color schemes, it's not too bad, but for syntaxes, it's absolutely mind-boggling. I think that probably worked better for people in the TextMate world, because I think Mac has property list editor, well, like Xcode does, for example, to allow you to edit things in a nicer way. Interestingly enough, the software that I work on at work, or used to before I got on this web project, as I mentioned in the past, totally came from the world of um, Mac OS, sort of. It originally started on Next OS, and then we moved it to Rhapsody and Yellowbox on Windows before moving to Solaris and Linux, because Next, or Apple, had bought that and had decided that they were going to turn it into Mac OS X way back in the day, and they switched it from working on x86 architectures to only working on Power PCs. That's how long ago I was doing that. I mentioned something about that in the Discord earlier today, and as a result of that, uh, dictionaries used to be able to be specified in sort of a JSON format or in an XML format, and you could go either way, and everything was transitioning towards the JSON format because it's a lot easier. Uh, but TextMate precedes that. I hope the devs change the format of TM preferences to something else in future builds. You're not the only one. Uh, Anytime anybody mentions that, you might see a whole lot of hopeful faces and thumbs up on the thing. Um, I think there's been a lot of conjecture about what format TM preferences should be in, because they could often, for things like indenting and stuff, they need to have regular expressions, and regular expressions are a bit of a pain in the butt to represent in JSON. So maybe YAML, but YAML is sort of ridiculously hard to parse in a weird way if you look at the actual full spec of the things that you can do with it. There's a YAML processor that Sublime uses for syntax definitions, but it's not a full, YAML 1.1 parser. It only does certain things, and if you use other YAMLisms in there, it'll yak on you in order to make things a little bit easier. Um, these are all stored in the correct place, one would hope. Um, So that's still not quite right. But I think I might need to, yeah, those files are all there. So we need to jump those up into the resources settings. I don't already have one, do I? Oh, I did already have one. Crap. Oh, all right. Well, that was unfortunate. In that case, let's do this. I should have checked that. Or, known that the fact that there's not any gutter there probably means I've already done that. Not that one. Here and here. And I'm pasting these in even though I'm pretty sure that doesn't actually, might not actually be what I want. Let's go ahead and get rid of those. And that one too. Incidentally, Ash, when you asked earlier in the Discord whether the ability to do this is available via a plugin, what did you mean by that exactly? Being able to open multiple files or doing this from a quick panel? Variable function tags. That really seems like something that it should be working with. TEX. Okay, that should totally be a misspelled word. So let's quit and restart to make sure all of the settings synchronize. Because occasionally that can be a bit of an issue. Stop tipping over, bro. Still no, huh? Oh, let's get rid of those because that would break stuff pretty hardcore. If we went to tags, did I not copy that correctly? Variable.function.tags, let's say. That really seems like, or, can you recreate that behavior? If I have a quick panel with a bunch of absolute file paths, can I do something to write it and open it in the window? There is, if we go to, this plugin, I think, does something like that. Including file preview and the ability to open multiple files. it's doing it from a quick panel. So technically, the answer to that is yes. But I'm not sure offhand how you do it. It would probably be easier now. Um, Basically, you need to be able to have a key binding on like the right arrow key that knows that it's inside of the view that is the widget that is the text edit in the quick panel at the point where you're the one that started the quick panel. And I can't remember exactly how this does that, but if you look at the code for this, you might be able to pull that out. It's been a long time since I looked at it, um, certainly more than 10 months ago. Probably 2, 3 years, I was curious about the exact same thing when I learned that the right arrow key lets you pin files like that. I think where this falls down to some degree is if there's actual filter text that's inside of the text area when you do it. I think you might have to do a magic to be able to insert that back in. Um, which technically could be done by way of doing an uh, opening the thing and then saying window run command insert that gets things to route in a different way, right? Like if you do run command insert on a view, it inserts the text into that view. If you do run command insert on a window, then the active window that's getting the command figures out what view is the one that has the focus so that it and dispatches the message to there. So that was, for example, a hacky way that we used to be able to open the command palette and insert text into it directly. I even have an example of a plugin laying somewhere I'd have to dig up where you can hit a key binding and it would open the command palette and start typing text for you in there robotically, and then select it. In fact, if you watch uh, the very first video that I ever put on the channel, the common questions one for scopes and scope selectors, the intro and outro shows typing into the command palette to start the screencast and go back to the credits, which I only did one time because that was a pain in the butt to edit. That's actually using a plugin. That's not actually me typing that in there. It's typing itself in automatically. So that, like I say, it may be easier to do that now. As a matter of fact, we could even check that if we did at view.element. The go-to anything input can be found this way. So you could do the thing where you figure out which view is associated with that. I would guess that the way that it's being done in that older plugin is maybe having an event listener that triggers for unactivated or something that knows when the command palette or the quick panel is about to open, but I'm not sure. Hmm. Variable.function.tags, text.youtube, variable.function. Okay, let's say that. Whoops, does that have any effect? I'm not entirely sure why this would not be doing what a person wants. Gotta stop doing that though, because that's not going to get it. View.settings.get. It's definitely set to something. Am I misremembering what that setting is actually for? Oh, let's close this window. We don't need it anymore. I cannot type that. Scopes that are checked for spelling errors. I am resetting. I wonder if those, just turning it off and on again, solve the problem. Whoops. All right, well, I mean, that works. That's intriguing. Yeah. Now, what obvious thing am I missing that is stopping this spelling selector from actually applying when the correct syntax is in? Because it seems to be working up here. P101 is totally a spelling error. I mean, clearly it's not, but, and those are totally triggering. Why wasn't this one? I could almost imagine that it had something to do with there being regions in there, except that it didn't know that there were misspelled words. Um, so let us close and reopen that thing after yeah, we did the same thing there, right? Yeah. Text.youtube is a thing that we had in here. Should be fine. One misspelled word, 26 misspelled words, 0 misspelled words. Is that interesting or is that interesting? That could be a bug, or that could just be me doing something stupid. Let's go ahead and close that. And yeah. Nope. Mm, let's copy this just to see. View.erase regions this. And the other one was this. So those aren't in there, but it still doesn't think that there is a problem there. What if word wrap wasn't turned on? Does that have any effect on it? Nope. Well, I'm a bit of a loss to describe that one. It's also kind of unfortunate that this is the case. Never mind having project-specific lists of words. It would be nice to have a list of things that you could apply in a setting too, because I don't actually want a project for this, but I don't need to know that P101 is not spelled correctly. All else being equal, I'd be happier knowing that I could at least turn this on if I wanted to. So that scope should match it, but it still don't. Preference. Oh shoot! Do it in the correct window, guy. Yeah, those will go in my user package, so that doesn't count. Yeah, it works if it's plain text. It just doesn't work for. It doesn't work for this particular syntax, even though this one and this one both have the exact same setting of text.youtube, and they can tell things are incorrect. Fine. Get spelling selector. Maybe that's not being applied. Yeah. That view has text.youtube and it finds errors. This one has text.youtube and it found 26. And this one has text.youtube, but nothing is misspelled, even though TEXCT is most definitely not a word that is spelled correctly. I can't think of any reason for that to be the case, however, other than the scope doesn't match, except, that it must, unless this is not text.youtube, but it certainly seems like it is. Certainly seems to think it matches, except for the part where it doesn't. That is an intriguing bit of business right there. I guess there's really not a lot to be said about that, is there? Which, This API now supports the ability to bloop, bloop, bloop. 50 units in addition to, woo, that's a lot of units, man. Has one common use case, which is described below. Okay. Updates the specific ID, snippet title, and there's no way to actually close that without repopping it, does it? Title and category ID. Oh wait, this is the title and category ID properties are all required, and all others are optional. The properties that the write operation will set, as well as the properties the API response will include. Tricky beans. You can see why the quota cost is so high on this. I think everybody gets like 10,000 units per day, which is more than adequate for most things. Provide a video resource in the request body. Okay. I'm not actually doing anything with category ID, and I'm not entirely sure what that is. I guess that's probably that. To switching the order of the view matter? I'm just shooting something in the dark since I haven't played much with settings related to spelling. Switching the order of the view? What exactly do you mean by that? All three of these are being set up with the exact same code, and all of them have a base syntax. This one is text YouTube tags, and this one is text YouTube body, and this one is text YouTube title, but the spelling selector is text YouTube, which should match all of them without any specificity, but it only works 2 out of the 3. Title, If you're submitting an update request and your request does not specify a value for a property that already has a value, the property's existing value will be deleted. Well, son of a bitch. I guess that means I can't just store the video ID. I have to store absolutely everything in there if I want to modify the tag's description and the title. Otherwise, I'll break things. I guess that makes it easier to fiddle with, though. Yeah. So that's maybe something we're not going to worry about now because the stream, such as it is almost over. Yeah. I am using assigned syntax for all of these, right? Let's try this. Super test. Oops, don't do that, Val. Just to verify, I mean, I'm pretty sure we already know that this is the case, but if these settings apply this particular setting, then if this setting, this view has the thing, and we said view.settings.get, it comes back true. Oops. So yeah, those settings are definitely being applied in there, but there's just something that's stopping spelling from working. They all have an event listener. We verified that having the region there doesn't matter. You can't really control what order the settings from the settings file are applied, if that mattered, which it shouldn't. Even turning this off and on manually has no effect on anything. So I'm kind of at a loss to explain why that is doing the case. I wonder if there's a bug. I wonder if there is a wow, rough. I think I tried that, but I am not adverse to turning it off and on again. We'll do that and re-pop that. Still no. We'll even, oh yeah, even close this window, quit, restart, and details for 106. Come on, you. 126 and 0. Still no. Spell checking is not working for the YAML syntax. Yeah, I think that's actually been resolved. And why would spelling selector be in that one? That's your thing. So maybe it's a closed issue? Nope. That one's a duplicate. Yeah. There was a... Oh. Oh. Yeah, okay. That is good. Shoot. Hang on a second here. I just had a thought about why that might be the case. Sorry, it's not debug. It is draw debug. Yeah, okay. That's the problem. Okay. We have Whoops, don't do that. Let's close that. We have a plausible reason for why this is happening. Now, the setting I just turned on here gets Sublime to display in debug information. It makes the text. I don't know how well this might be coming across in the thing. So let's just do this. Let's say view.settings.set font size. Let's say 30. So it's huge. It's huge, Conan. Now you can see every other character in this is an alternating color. Sort of a darker blue, then a lighter blue, then a darker blue, then a lighter blue. If we did this in this window, you can see that this word is dark, then the word is light, the word is dark, the word is light. Each of these colored segments where there's all one thing is one token as created by the syntax definition, and it's the tokens themselves that are tested for whether or not they're valid words. So because of the way the syntax is matching this, due to that change that I made earlier in the stream, this doesn't appear to be a list of words. It appears to be a list of single characters, and each one of those single characters is valid because the letter B, that's not something that it can spell check. So if we were to come back to in this folder, not that one, pardon me. What if we said not one or more? Now it works. There's 4 misspelled words in here. It's not really underlining them the way that it should, but it knows that they're wrong. So we got that going on. It's not something, yeah, draw debug is one of those hidden settings, if you will. That is some interesting information, useful for things like this. John mentioned it a ways back in the Discord, but the reason that this sprang to mind is because we were looking at the issues for spelling selector, those ones where YAML was not spell checking wasn't working in YAML had absolutely everything to do with the fact that the rules for finding things like name, hidden context, main, and such like that matched the first character of the thing as a disambiguation and then matched the remainder. And even though all of them have the same scope, because they're the way that the scopes were matched was straddling 2 matched rules, it is considered to be 2 tokens. So name would appear to be the word N and then the word aim. And N is not misspelled, but aim is. So if this was just a standard YAML file, then that would not work. As a matter of fact, we might even be able to pull something like that off by doing this. Oh, crunkety crunk. Okay, hang on a second. Syntax YAML, turn on spell checking, and oh, maybe it was actually fixed here. Yeah, all right. I can't remember exactly when it was that was fixed. DeathAxe was the one that fixed it. But it shows you that. Yeah, we don't need that one either. Oh, I probably should have did that, I guess. Okay. That's the other one. It shows you the different tokens that are in here, exactly, that are parsed by the syntax files. And as far as I understand it, the rule is 1 token per match rule. So if we took off this and then we looked, we can see it's doing this, because although if we check this, oh, holy Christ, variable function tag, and this is Sublime Text variable function tag, and this is contiguously, this is a pile of tokens that all have the exact same scope, but they end up as multiple tokens because the match rule says S. Yeah, that matches. That's this. And then it goes back to find more things and finds the U and says, yeah, that matches. So this is one of those examples where having more than one, uh, you want to try to, I guess, in a sense, be greedy about how much you match, but it could theoretically also cause problems if you try to grab too much. Now, that said, I think, and you'd have to, check with this, that if you did something like had a regex that matched, say, def, the name of a function, and then the round bracket to know that you definitely found the start of something, and then you had captures and assigned it, I think in that case, each one of those captured things would have its own distinct scope. But using draw debug, you could totally test that and see what's going on there. Um, but that shows you the tokens. And I think if you look in the Discord and search for draw debug, you should totally find that as well. I'm going to search that right now just to see. Oh, shoot, that's going in the, sorry, my bad. You got to be in the actual server, not in the, not the thing here. Draw debug. Draw debug is from 2006 or thereabouts. Boop. You can turn on draw debug in a YAML to see the tokenization. There we go. Here. Shoot. And boop. Right here. Autocompletion in Sublime 4 uses tokens to determine the available completions versus Sublime 3, which just uses word separators. However, this doesn't play well with YAML, which splits the first character of every word into its own token. You can turn on View Settings, set Draw Debug True in the YAML file to see the tokenization. This will also make word wrap wonky, but I can't imagine too many people have word wrap on for YAML files. And there you go. That's related to something completely different, but there you go. Stick that back over there for the time being. This is why it's, I always find it fun to hang around in the Discord because the developers are in there. You never know when John might let something slip. Or, you could ask him a question about how the internals of things work and he'll elucidate you on those sorts of things. Mostly he hangs around in the Discord immediately preceding and following when there's a release, unlike the other devs, which seem to be around more. Well, I shouldn't say that. He can sometimes be around, but not saying anything, I guess is the way to go. Sort of like in the forum. Like he reads the forum, but he doesn't often post in the forum, that sort of thing. But I think that will potentially solve that problem there. We're going to need to close this window and snag a new one to see. And there are misspelled words in here, but they're not being, oh, there it is. There it's being underlined there. TEXCT. Perfect. And we can even, whoa, don't do that. Oh, right. I set double tap of control to open the context menu because my Windows keyboard for the laptop over there doesn't have the key for it. We can actually even see the words being squiggled there, even though this is around it. Now, what I think I might do here, just as one last thing, let's close that up. What did I fiddle here? Probably doesn't need that. Flags equals sublime dot draw no fill. And we'll throw that down here. Like, I'll save that. Thank you. So, oh, I guess we gotta reload. That might look a little better for the purposes of letting us know that those things are wrong. Might even go with that. And it can be distinguished from the other ones being read. That way it shows us that they are, in fact, in error. but if this text was longer, I think we should see the longer bit actually being filled in to let you know that's a different kind of error. That seems like it's probably a good compromise. I don't know why I'm backing out of this. I mean, this isn't actually persisting anywhere. Whoops. One too far. One of those things I've played with a time or two is being able to block the undo command from undoing the append that originally created data in there. I would love the ability to clear the undo history for a particular view programmatically to stop stuff like that from happening. It would make override audit a lot nicer when you're opening overrides as well, or creating a new one anyway. It would also make Randy happy because sometimes you have to close your terminus view and reopen it because all of the changes that appear in the terminal as you're doing something are actually being tracked in Sublime's undo buffer. So I think that should be about, yeah, we have, oh, no. One of the things I didn't add to my stream dashboard that I created was something that actually tracks how long I'm streaming. I should probably add that now that I know that everything actually works. So let's go ahead and do this. Hey, hey! Looking good. And you can probably even still hear me. Yeah, things are still working. 2 for 2 on streams that actually have this control panel working. So I think we got a fair amount of stuff done here. We had one hell of a weird bug and managed to track it, and even managed to discuss some secret hidden settings that are otherwise unknown. As a matter of fact, somebody on the Discord actually contacted me once because they discovered that setting. On their own, if you will, not in the Discord, and they wanted to know if uh, I had knew about it and what it is that it actually does because they weren't sure about it, but they weren't sure that Sublime HQ wanted it spread around in the public Discord in case it was supposed to be a secret. And as it happens, I was totally able to tell them exactly what it is that it does and point out that John himself mentioned it in the Discord, and it's been around since 2006, so it's nothing new in Sublime 4. It should work in Sublime 3 as well, although I have a recollection that the text is blue and orange and not two different shades of blue, but that might have something to do with the color scheme that I'm using at the current time or something along those lines. So you might get a slightly different result. In which case, I should probably figure out what to do in that in this Monakai Pro thing. In any case, that has been a fun stream. We might continue with this next week, adding some auto completions or maybe even displaying the thumbnail on the other side of the window. Although that does beg the question of what if we wanted to change the thumbnail? That could be a little bit tricky. And maybe work on actually being able to send updates back the other way, which it sounds like we would need to request more information when we get the details and persist it all so we can send it up. Because if we decided to only send up a title and not a description, we'd throw the description away. So we probably don't want to mess up any of the other metadata. That totally seems like something that requires a sample test video to play with to make sure that things don't go all wonky, though. But that's going to do it for the stream. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, you can subscribe to the channel to be warned by YouTube when I'm about to go live, which is every Tuesday. Down in the description is a link to the other channel where we do regular Sublime text tutorial videos. The next video coming up is Plugin 101, which I believe is going to be the terminology video where you get to learn about Windows views, selections, regions, all that good stuff. In any case, that is going to do it. So until the next stream, this is OdatNurd. Thank you for watching and have a sublime day. And now I reach down here and press the button like so.